My lord, we just received word of a massive object approaching the planet's surface.
Malthus could feel that vexing emotion return as he calmly collected his thoughts.
The Emperor smiles upon us, Lieutenant. It seems you will have your chance to show no fear this day.
Hello and welcome to the very first and hopefully not the last episode of the Creatives Unite podcast. I am Liam London, author of The Shifterverse, an epic sci-fi audiobook series found here on YouTube, link in the description, but we're not here to talk about that today. Today we're here to cover the wonderful project of a very good friend of mine, Pathios, and that is the Heathens intent. I have with me today the project director, the man himself. Pathios, would you like to say hello, my friend?
Hey, how's it going?
And I also have with me one of the cast members, Megabryman. I hope I've said your name correctly, my friend, who plays one of the Astartes. How are you doing, guys?
Yep. Very well, thank you.
Doing good.
So, today we're going to be discussing the project as a whole and part one. So, the Heathens intent. For a refresher for people who are listening to this who want to know what it is, for legal reasons, I suppose we have to say it's fan fiction, but in my opinion, it's fan fiction done right. It's set in the 40k universe, but where I say it's fan fiction done right is that it doesn't intrude on anything that's canon. And I think that's a wonderful aspect of it. We don't have Gulliman or Abaddon or anyone sort of major poking their head in and basically ruining what is, a wonderfully immersive story. Because you tend to get that a lot in fan fiction. Abaddon will shove his head in, or Vulcan will just appear out of nowhere and ruin the immersion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's fan fiction, but if you wanted to include this in your headcanon, if you wanted to incorporate it into the canon, it's perfectly doable. So, I would like to first direct some questions at the project director himself, Pathios. I would like to ask you, my friend, what was your inspiration behind this project? I know that you did an audio drama that centered around 40k before this, known as the Scourge of Constance. I wanted to know, what was your inspiration for this project? What made you want to delve into 40k?
Yeah, so I work with a guy that helped me write Scourge of Constance, and after this 1 month of training I had to go through, I was sitting at the airport, and being in the military, I'm in a certain unit, and I based it around that aspect of that unit, which is like small teams. And I realized you don't really see that in 40k. It's mostly entire chapters.
Yeah, it's grand scale battles, isn't it?
Yeah, and you don't ever see splinter forces or anything tiny. You don't see the tiny details behind a lot of the stuff that might even happen. So I figured it was small enough and tiny enough to even slip into any actual canon. If I doubt it would get that far, but if it ever got that far, it would be able to fit in perfectly without any problems. And that friend of mine that was writing Constance, I was like, well, I could just branch off of that. We already got a beginning, so I decided to label that as my prelude. It's already set up and ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, that is the wonderful aspect about this. It is, I think a lot of people will sort of say that writing fan fiction, it's easy because you have all this stuff you can sort of steal from. You're just stealing from other stuff, but it's really not, is it? Especially if you want to do it properly, because yes, you have stuff to borrow, but borrowing stuff and making it original, I think, can be, I wouldn't say it's more challenging or less challenging, but it's a different form of challenge to just writing something original. So, can I ask, what was the inspiration behind the writing? What was the sort of the writing style in the audio drama format instead of, say, perhaps a book?
Actually, after listening to Shifterverse, so that's kind of what helped me guide myself away from that, because I realized how long that must have taken. Like that must have took for you to piece all that together. And I realized, my expertise was the audio drama format. I'm not good at narration. I'm pretty decent at making the conversation flow whenever I edit these things together. And that's how I started piecing it. But I started with the characters. I actually write a story for a long time. I just pieced together. I knew what I wanted them to do, and I knew what characters I wanted, and that's what helped me, continue writing. Was just writing the characters, and then as I finished a character, I would branch off in ideas of like what they would do, what their passion and motivations were. So I pieced it from characters to the story instead of story to the characters.
That's a very good place to start. I mean, if people don't like your characters, if you don't have good characters, you can have the most epic story in the world, and it won't be likable, because you need people to follow. You need to be able to root for the characters, basically. Was there any challenges within the writing? Did you find that you had to overcome? Was there anything where you were like, oh, I would love to do this, but oh no, I can't because of the rules of the universe?
Yeah, that's actually that's where I was starting. At the very, very beginning, I had a split. I guess you could say mistake of trying to add in Guilliman for a second, and I decided against it. So when Felonius says I should have contacted Guilliman, that's actually somebody else. That's not the Guilliman.
Oh right. See, I really liked that when I was listening to it. I was like, oh, we have a reference to the time frame in which this is taking place. Oh, it must be taking place after the fall of Cadia and stuff, because Gulliman's just been mentioned in an offhand way, and I kind of like that. But it's interesting to hear that it's not actually Reboot himself.
It's so don't get me wrong though, it is up to par, or it's up to standard with the time. It's not like in the past. It's supposed to be happening during or a little after the Gathering Storm when Guilliman's awoken. So but that is not him that he's talking about. It's just another person named Guilliman, which I'm debating if that should come in or not. If it should just be a one-time thing, or if it should actually be a character.
I mean, that's quite a meta. Like, if you were to incorporate it, that's quite a meta element, because if people keep name dropping him, and people are obviously going to be expecting the Guilliman to appear, and then if it's just some rank and file general or something, or rank and file Astartes, I think that would be quite comical, actually. In a good way, of course. I would also like to ask Pathios, were there any challenges with the project as a whole when you were sort of piecing it together? And I mean, as the project director, the leader of the project, did you find it difficult to find voice actors, or did you have them lining up, or what was your challenges with putting your cast and crew together?
So I can't remember who was first, but I put this project on. I usually work on Hit Record, which is something owned by Joseph Gordon-Levitt's production company, and they don't allow copywritten material. It's all got to be original. So I branched over to Casting Call, and that's where I put out the project, all the character details, and it was obviously just what I had at the time, which was the Space Marines. And I can't remember who was the first one in the shoot, but somebody popped in, and that was, that was my first. I think that might have been my first person, but
the first pebble that starts a landslide.
Yeah, and I got I think just under 15 or 20 people. It wasn't many people auditioning for this thing, but the only person I really remember, because he's so passionate about 40K, is Supreme. That the guy that plays Felonius, he's very passionate, and he was just dead to rights for Felonius. He had him down. There was no question.
Yes, very very much so. You can definitely hear in his acting how much he really put into the role. Speaking of acting, we haven't had a chance to speak to him yet. We have one of them here with us now, Megabryman. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Not too bad. So I'd like to ask you, Bryman, you play Maldus, don't you? The lead Marine, so kind of the equivalent of, I would say, Loken from the Horus Rising series, the Garrow-esque character. At least in this first part, he would be the protagonist, wouldn't he? I would say. Yeah. What were your thoughts on playing an Astartes? Because it's a very tall order to voice a Space Marine, because they demand a certain level of emotionlessness, but they also demand a certain level of passion in a very paradoxical sense. What were your thoughts on playing in Astartes?
So it was coming into this whole project. I didn't really know a whole lot about 40k, unfortunately. So Pathios approached me through something I did on Hit Record, and asked if I'd like to play the role of Maldus or give it a go. And I think I just went through and did a couple voices until Jonathan found something that he was
happy with.
Sort of after, yeah.
Yeah, I must say you do a very good job of establishing presence with Maldus. The deep way in which he speaks, it certainly brings it. Like when this guy talks, like you can like with the first scene, for example, you know, you can almost hear Felonius sort of shaking just from the tone of Maldus's voice. So I think you did a very good job on that.
Thank you.
What are your thoughts on the character itself? Or I would say, what are your thoughts on the characters as an ensemble as well?
I think you've got me on the spot here.
No, man, it wasn't good.
Yeah. No, I might have to come back to it. I just
It's no problem. Yeah, we'll for anyone listening, I didn't send questions beforehand like I said I would. I kind of wanted natural off the cuff responses. Probably a bad choice in retrospect.
Sorry. That one just lagged out.
Yeah, no problem. So I wanted to ask, was there any challenges that you had to overcome with voicing the character in terms of the acting or in terms of your setup with how you record? Was there anything that got in your way while you were recording?
Definitely my setup got in the way. I'm still in the process of learning how to get my setup consistent sort of thing. Whereas I'm trying to do the whole into the cupboard sort of. There was a bit too much echo coming from behind. So for a lot of this, I ended up being in the cupboard, crouched over, trying not to hit my head on the hanging rail.
Yes, I mean. Yeah, carry on, my friend.
But yeah, just through trial and error, pretty much. But I think I've finally got something that's pretty consistent.
Yeah, I mean, acoustic treatment is a very, very expensive endeavor.
It's a nightmare,
for sure.
Man.
Yeah, it's very expensive to do, and you know, it's not just that. I find as well with recording, it's also trying to block out bleed from the outside, because soundproof rooms are, you know, you think acoustic treatment's expensive. Soundproof rooms, they're another beast entirely. Yeah. But I think you've done a very, very admirable job, and I really like the way that because obviously with the cast and crew we have obviously the wonderful Scott Allen narrating this and playing one of the characters. We have some semi-pro voice actors, we have some aspiring voice actors, and I really do love the way everyone's come together, and no one has tried to step on anyone, and I think that's wonderful about this project. Everyone seems to be getting along and sharing their insights and sharing their knowledge, and I think it's made it a very. I think that's part of the charm of this, if that makes sense.
It's creating a good community, at least on the server, which I try to inspire amongst everybody. I don't, I try to make sure everybody's okay with each other. I didn't want to grab somebody that was going to be too overzealous about something, which for like a day or two, I kind of thought about it for Supreme. I was like, oh man, this guy, I hope he's not a gatekeeper of the 40k universe, but he wasn't, thank God. You know, he's a really nice guy about the whole thing.
So speaking of the cast and crew as a whole, Pathios, how was it editing the project, having to work with different? I have to speak carefully here because I don't want to sound like I'm ripping on people. Working with different levels of polish in terms of your recordings, because obviously we have Scott, and his stuff it's compressed, it's EQ'd, it's pretty much when it comes to you, it's where it needs to be. Then you have, others like Supreme who kind of, I think they give you more or less the raw audio instead of, trying to polish them up themselves, and that's fair enough because obviously they rip on them for that.
Cut out a
But
little bit.
sorry, I was just talking about how was it trying to bring the varying levels of audio polish together,
Right.
because obviously we have we have Scott who's a pro, then we have someone like Supreme who kind of gives you raw audio because he himself is not a sound engineer, so he wouldn't know how to do it.
So that's always, especially in the past, it's always been something I've had to learn. Having no actual experience and only learning throughout the years, trial and error. I've had to realize what was kind of raw audio and what was polished, because at first I just didn't really know, and then, and then started listening.
It's a world of nitpick, isn't it? But it's one of those.
Yeah.
At first it's very nitpicky, but then when you do hear the difference, you're like, oh, hang on. Yeah. I can hear
It becomes real easy to just like separate them between. I don't have to work on that one, or I got to polish this one up. But that's obviously more of the time consuming part of it is that. But I have to force myself to not worry about it until I've lined everybody's voices up, which is what takes. It doesn't take forever, but if I don't do it right away, it will take forever. I'll be listening to somebody's audio and realize it's all not polished, and I wanna do it right then and there because I don't like waiting for things. And then I tell myself, no, let me just line everything up first and then edit everything later. So it's always a struggle for me because I just want to hurry up and get it done. I know I can do it, and then I look to my Lord and Savior Liam in case I can't get anything done.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed when levels of quality on the recording. So like Scott's was just phenomenal. Like, that guy just straight away knew what he was doing. Then you had Maldus, and then you had what's that, Dramone, and one of the other Marines. I forget his name.
Yeah,
I forget his name.
Volcar,
but who was
Pathios.
Tayfios was the one I was looking for. And you have those guys who are close, not quite at Scott's level of polish, but close. And then you had like Supreme and Volcar, who, like, again, no disrespect to them whatsoever, very obviously recording with less than desirable setups. And I noticed that.
I leave that pretty empty for every voice actor I work with, because I don't expect them to do any of the editing. I don't expect them to know sometimes. It's just whoever. Yeah, because I've started from ground zero.
Yeah.
I've always worked with people who were just friends to begin with, and they know nothing of voice acting. They're just like, I'll do it because I'm your friend. So then sometimes they're natural, but the editing is not there because that's not their forte. It's nothing.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a long time to learn how to produce vocals. I mean, I think Scott spoke about this on the Discord server. He was like, you have to learn how to act, but then you also have to learn how to set your recording up, and then you also have to learn how to edit it. One thing I wanted to move on to with you, Pathios, I've listened to a lot of your work, and I would like to know your thoughts on the guitar at the beginning of part 1. Because this seems to be your signature tone. You have a tone to this guitar and a play style with this guitar, and it permeates throughout all of your audio dramas. It's a very, very much a signature sound. And I wanted to ask, did you put it on this to sort of give it a stamp so that this is the Pathios stamp, or do you just like that sound and you wanted it in there to set it up?
So the story behind that is real quick. I'm not going to go through it all the way, but I started off wanting to do music for horror narrators on YouTube. Mr. Creepypasta is one of the first ones I tried to email, and I got no response. So I said, forget it, I'll do it myself. And I made my own audio drama, which is on there, my very first one. But obviously I had no keyboard, I had nothing, not even what Fruity Loops. I didn't even have that. I had, so I just got my guitar, plugged it in, whipped it up, and it's necessity is what breeded my, what you say, stamp.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
Yeah.
why I did that. That's me. That's my that's my little.
Yeah, I mean,
Pathios
it's
stuff.
certainly like throughout all your work and including on this one, it's certainly, it's that seal of approval. This is definitely by this guy, because the tone as well is
Yeah.
the thing I'm very big on. It's a unique tone, and I think even your tuning is slightly unorthodox as well. If I'm listening right, it's not
Yeah,
concert tuned, the guitar.
No, it's usually tuned down. The E's are replaced with C's and standard tuned from there out. So it's tuned like a few whole steps down. So and I do it because obviously I know you've heard it. I'm getting
Yeah.
more into creating metal themes for Warhammer 40k. Be sure you check it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh shit, the master himself.
Do we have a new
Yeah.
a new entry into the podcast?
Scott Allen.
Hello, people.
Hello. Hello,
Howdy.
Scott.
How are you?
Not too bad, my friend. How are you?
Good. Nice to put voices with interesting names.
Really, this is very odd, because I was expecting Scott's audio to come through perfectly crisp and stuff, because he is our resident big time voice actor. Are you talking to us from your phone, my friend?
Yeah, when I use these Discord apps, it's just through my normal PC speakers, etc. Typically, is it really crunchy sounding? Because
yeah, it's not your usual level of polish, my friend.
no.
But that's
I'll see if I can switch it to a different speaker and mic in a second here.
Yeah, no problem, my friend. We were talking, Pathios, if we could pick it up, about the music. Sorry for this. So we're moving more into metal when we get to later on in the chapters, and I think that's a very good stylistic choice, because 40k as a universe tends to be very over the top.
Cathedral.
Yeah, and it's quite brutal as well, and metal lends a certain stylistic. It has a stylistic connotations of brutality, so definitely a good choice.
Yeah, chose that definitely for the classical aspect also, because the birth of all music will help breed a variety of it. There's just too much of the. I mean, you'll see it on one of the videos I posted for one of the metal themes. Somebody straight up said, "You need more bells and pretty much organs," and I'm like, "That's exactly what I'm avoiding."
Yeah,
I
remember when we were, because for those who are listening to this, I had a hand in this project as well, even though I'm hosting the podcast. I did the music, and I remember when we were consulting. At first, the stuff I was giving you was very, because obviously my point of reference was sort of the Dawn of War games and the few audio dramas that are out there, and I do remember the conversation veering towards, you've made this 240k. I don't want these choirs at the front. I don't want I don't want these rising horns and these rising strings, because it needs a stamp that makes it its own while retaining that 40k sound.
Yeah, that was a really hard thing to master, and
we got there in the end.
I'm glad you're as good as you are, because I knew what I wanted, but I did not know how to piece it together.
I'm going to chime back in for 2 seconds and say that the music is amazing. So between the both of you, what you guys did with the story, I do a lot of audiobooks on my own, or have done a number of them, and I've always wanted to be able to score them, but I just haven't had the time or patience to do it on my own. So to lend my voice to a project where suddenly you get to hear all the sound, the music, the scoring, etc., that's a lot of the reason that I like to do some of these things for fun, just because it makes me feel so happy to hear it all put together that way.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's wonderful. We'll move to at the start of this podcast. I asked Bryman, who we have with us, who played Maldus, Scott. I wanted to ask you, what were your thoughts on playing an Astartes? Because you play, I always pronounce his name wrong, and Pathios kicks off at me. Fideo. I always say Fido for some reason. You played Fideo. How was it voicing an Astartes? Because it's generally quite a hard character to sort of voice, because you need a certain degree of emotionlessness, as I was saying to Brian, but you also need a certain degree of passion. It's a very hard thing to voice, I find.
Right. Those are the tricks, right? And so I always find, first of all, when it comes to the names, I don't know. I think I had to write back to Jonathan a few times to be like, could you please phonetically spell out some of these names? Because I was like, Fadio? What's the, So yeah, Fideo, Pathios, all of them. That really, I think, well-written story and the character lines themselves give you enough insight into sort of their relationships and emotions. And I just kind of took that, plus the narrator line. So being able to read the narration, and if you kind of pay attention to it all, it gives you just enough insight to the characters that you then come up with, as an actor, that character and through the character, that voice, to present. So, and
I think it's very interesting how you came to how you thought Fideo sounded, because I don't know if Jonathan told you, I had a go at voicing him first, and I got it. I kind of missed the mark on what this character was about, and I remember doing the voice, and I remember Jonathan being like, "Oh, it's too smarmy. The first one's too smarmy, and the first one sounds too old." And I think it's very interesting how actors approach the character, and I certainly think what you brought was better, but I do find that interesting how in regards to what you've said about how the actor sort of brings what he can to a character.
Yep. Years and years ago when I was starting, I think I probably fell into the same thing as a lot of younger voice actors, and that is, let me find a voice that's cool, right? I'll find some voice that's cool. And then, you realize as you get skilled or more skillful, that it's acting, and the voice comes when the character comes, right?
Absolutely.
So when you find the character, you find the voice, not the other way around.
Yeah, I stand by that as well myself. I voiced my own audiobook series, and I certainly when I was starting out, I know the process. I know exactly what you're talking about.
The challenges, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. That was one thing I wanted to ask you, Scott. I don't think I'm going to get as insightful an answer as I did from Bryman, because you are a professional. Did you find any challenges did you come across any challenges while you were recording this? But I'm guessing the answer is going to be no, because you have a professional setup.
No technical challenges. Character-wise, that's the thing I love to do, audiobooks or other voiceover or any film and things like that. But the thing that was the most challenge for me, and I actually want to improve upon it, is the narrator voice is not a sort of a timbre or voice that I use as often, and I wanted him to be sort of a deep and gravelly sounding guy, because I felt that would really help carry the story. And also, by having the narrator a little emotionless and really just a narrator, because in audiobooks, you lend a different thing to the narrator, right? He's the storyteller. He's got to give you the highs and the lows and there's some drama. But in this, I just wanted him to be this guy. I'm just going to tell you the story the way it is right now, So
real quick, I had a question, Scott. Did you listen to Skirter Constance, hear my narration, and have some sort of let me take over when you heard that?
Okay, well, maybe.
Yeah, I figured. You approached me with that,
because that was a really good story. And there's oftentimes I listen to stories, I'm like, oh, if the narrator was just that little, it was good. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, I like to take stories like that and go, would they redo it?
I was just curious, because I kind of figured it.
Yeah,
No,
it's certainly the narrator is certainly a very big part of a story. I mean, to lend my own like personal experience, I'd ask you, Scott, to go listen to my audiobook and go listen to chapter 5, because everyone has told me about this. Basically, the writing, everyone said the writing is great, the story's great, but the narration just does my nutting. And I think and I agree with them. I am going to go back and redo that chapter, because it was really sort of dragged out. And I think what you're saying is true. The narrator brings a lot. And it's like you say, they bring the highs, they bring the lows. They can set the tone as well, with just their voice quite often.
Right. And that's the thing about these types of stories, is that because there's also the scoring and the sound effects, the narrator doesn't have to carry the highs and lows as much. And so keeping a consistent, strong voiced narration, I think, is way more important, to lend to the story. He's almost like a character, obviously, in these types of stories.
I got that sense too. Like for me, with the narration voice you chose, I can always imagine just a really sort of gruff, like Imperial Guard who's miraculously survived his service, and he's sat up at a bar and he's like, "Let me tell you a story of the,"
Exactly.
That's the vibe I get from him.
Exactly.
For sure.
That was a lot of fun.
Yes, it was, and it shows. I mean, while I've sort of critiqued some of the aspiring voice actors, sort of technical setups, the passion in this project from everyone is evident, I think. Even the guys with less competent technical setups have really brought their A game when it comes to the acting. They've given it everything they've got, and I think that's...
Yeah, I want to say on that, I am surprised that everybody stayed, because there were some that have, they gone ghost on me for like a whole month, and then they come back. There was one voice actor recently for the next coming up installment, and she was just like, "Hey, I'm still, this happened, but I'm still in." And it shocked me. I wasn't expecting that. You don't hear from somebody, you expect them to be gone forever on these types of things here.
It's difficult. It seems like in these types of stories, I've just gotten into the Warhammer 40K stuff in the last 6 months, through primarily you, Jonathan, and then I looked into a bunch of others, and I even have one other that I read for another guy that'll be coming out maybe in a month or so. Nice. Just to give it a try, see how things go. But I love the stories. I love the realm of the Warhammer stuff, and the more I'm seeing it and reading it, and then a friend of mine showed me his bookshelf that it's literally like 15 rows of Warhammer books. I'm like, wow, I had no idea.
Reading the books, make sure you read.
It's really been an eye opener to another sort of fan.
The Horus Heresy.
If you start reading it, Scott, make sure you pick the right books, because you could be turned off. It's a very hit and miss universe.
I figure it's similar to the Star Wars universe. I think some of the old EU were so good, and then there were others I was like, what are you even doing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Well, it's been fun. So I'm appreciative of the opportunity to get involved and have a little fun outside of my regular day job and the voiceover that I actually do. Things like this kind of just keep it fun and entertaining.
Keeps it fresh, doesn't it? And I suppose you can let your hair down as well, Scott, because I've worked in voice acting a little bit myself. I wouldn't class myself as a pro. I've been paid, so semi-professional, I'd say.
There you go.
But it's with stuff like this, you can let your hair down. When you're working for a client, you tend to find that they've got lots of notes. And lots, and they tend to send it back and be like, no, can you do it a little bit more like this? And sometimes it can be down to the syllable.
Oh, absolutely.
And with this, I think it's with projects like this, more passion projects, it's great, isn't it, to be able to I'm just going to do it like this and see if it works. And you're not
it's like the narrator voice. That was something that I've wanted to try, and I've done some promo videos or trailer stuff where you've got to do that in a world where blah, blah, blah.
I heard that on that demo.
But I've never had the chance to sort of maintain a voice and keep that kind of gruff sounding, and I still don't think he was gruff enough, so I don't want to change him up for the next sections of this same story. But I want to try something in another story even a little more different. So excellent.
Well, if it gives you inspiration, it's a great takeaway, isn't it? So I think we've covered the voice acting, we've covered the fan fiction elements. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about, Pathios? Is there anything else you'd like to discuss? Because I think we've covered most of our bases. I suppose we could actually delve into part 1 itself a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I was going to say we could delve into part 1 a little bit in terms of the story itself, and maybe give people an idea of what to expect when they delve in.
Yeah, that might be a good way. Yeah.
Yeah. So my personal opinion, I think it starts great. There's no, what I find annoying with 40k and a lot of 40k books, it always comes in so heavy and epic. There's always some battle going on where, there's 50 million guardsmen fighting, billions of tyrannids or something like that. This is not that. This is very small and contained. The first scene is just 2 people talking, and
that's the reason why I also created the small group. There's a huge explanation for that, but there's say only 5 to under 10 Marines that are out there, and they're not going to be fighting with 50 million guardsmen on one planet. So and also it was for editing purposes. I've obviously in the orc battle scene that was actually the biggest challenge for me, was creating all of that effect and making it sound good. So I didn't want to have to have every single scene that grand where I had to just spend hours upon hours of getting everything right. Because
the Foley plays a big part in with stuff like that. The Foley plays a big part, and it's kind of like Pandora's box with Foley. I think once you open it, you're like, oh, do I need a sound effect for this? Do I need a sound effect for that? And you end up going further down the rabbit hole, I find, where it's like, oh, I need to Foley every single little movement of every character. But I think you did a wonderful job on the battle. I think the battle is intense as it is, and you do get the sense that there's obviously some guardsmen trying to rally but not doing a good job, and then the Astartes just come on and wreck shit up, basically.
Yeah, I was also worried about the narration over the battle. Usually I separate those in any audio drama that I do, just for the fact that the speed of the narrator might not match with the speed of the battle.
Yeah, it's a fine line to tread. It's a very fine line to tread. I tend to find with battle scenes, when it comes to just sort of conventional book writing, stuff that has to be in there because it's a book, it tends to mess with the pacing a little bit. Stuff that has to be narrated, kind of, otherwise the story doesn't quite work. But it's got to be there. But it still slows things down when it could, when you want it more intense and fast-paced and in your face. And I mean, these Astartes in this battle, it's wonderful as well, because you've got it very, you've hit the nail on the head with how they're described in the lore, with how Astartes act. And it's like, they don't show up and there's no challenge. They just come and they step on these orcs like they're bugs. And I just think that's wonderful.
One thing I want to thank freaking Mega for is the way he says what he says right before the battle begins. He steps out, and it just sounds so nonchalant, like, take care of it, they're yours. And I appreciate that, man. That was like a perfect voicing for that line.
Yeah, it totally sold it for me. It totally sold it. They're here, this isn't a battle to them, it's pest control almost.
Yeah, they just training. It wasn't serious. Even Helbrand says it to Germans, like, your training's not over, we're still training right now.
Yeah. Absolutely. But yeah, I think part one does a very good job of establishing the biggest story, because I think that's something when you go into this, you can't expect, this isn't Istvan Burns or something like that. This is a very small, self-contained little story, but it helps set up. There's little things being said that I really like in this first part that's helping sort of pave the way for a much bigger story.
Yeah, if that makes sense. Yeah. I do my best to, because I remember the grandness of a Space Marine. The awe that you look at them in, or that anybody looks at them in, but like, at the same time, I want that to be very fluid. I don't want it to just be the forefront of every single Space Marine. These guys are at least respectable to other guardsmen. They don't just look at them as nothing. The way he talks to Felonius, he politely tells him, "I'm gonna do what I want to do." And then
I really liked
polite,
that.
rueful manner. He tells I'm gonna do what I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really liked
obviously, that. That line. There was 2 lines in there that I liked the most, and that was one of them. The second one was when Maldus talks to Marcellus, and he's like, "You think really highly of yourself, don't you?" And I don't want to reveal it here. I want people to listen to what he says during that time. But he insults them in a
passive aggressive almost.
Yeah, he does. The guy insults himself without realizing it.
But I think that's a very important thing, because I tend to find with a lot of fan fiction, when you read sort of Warhammer 40k fan fiction, the Space Marines are always one way or the other too far. So they're too gruff and they're too brutish.
Yeah.
Or they're way too eloquent and they're way too articulate. And I think you've struck a very nice balance with these guys. Like, they have that bloodlust that comes with being an Astartes, and then we of course they also have these moments of where they demonstrate their intellectual superiority over even generals and stuff. And I think and planetary governors even. And I think it's a very good balance that you've struck, and I hope when we get further in that sort of maintains, because nothing turns me off of 40k fanfiction more than badly written Space Marines. They're either Mary Sue's or they're the C word. I won't say
they're
it.
Borderline. They could be borderline orcs. I've read a few of that even in main stories. Like, Space Marines are technically just orcs, but for the humans.
Yeah, pretty much, and it ruins what they're supposed to be. I think they're essentially knights, aren't they? They're the equivalent of the Knights of the Round Table sort of connotations with Space Marines.
Hey guys, I hate to interrupt. I just wanted to say thank you for your time, but I've got to jump out.
No problem, Scott. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Same, appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
Talk soon.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye. So, I think we've covered all our bases here, gentlemen. Is there anything anyone else would like to chime in with?
Did Megabryman ever answer that question?
What thoughts on playing an Astartes and thoughts on your character?
Yeah, I guess just the character I've written for you, man. What you think?
I love the character. The character's great. Being able to portray someone who's, I guess, the commander of the squad, I guess through the voice that I gave him, it's because he's authoritarian, but his squad respects. He's not over the top, talking down. He's just.
He kind of conveys trust. I think he kind of knows that his guys know what they're doing. But he's still quite happy to put his foot down. I'm in charge,
Yeah,
they're brothers.
Yeah. I'm a little curious as to because I definitely selected you, man, for Maldus, because I wanted Maldus to be very pretty much towering voice wise, and I chose you for that, man. You got it. You naturally got it.
Yeah, the presence of the voice is exceptional. I remember talking with Jonathan about this. When Maldus speaks, everyone else shuts up, and that's kind of in your acting. That's a praise of your acting, and you managed to convey presence.
Yeah. My question though is do you plan that ahead of time, or is it just kind of you just put the lines out and think well, these varieties might work, let's send it off? How does that process work with you?
It's pretty much if with a little description helps, but a lot of the time I'll do a few voices, slight variations of the same one, and then I'll send that through and be
so you're just
go with
naturally
one of those. Sure,
Yeah.
I'll take that.
Did you have any? Because obviously you're a native Aussie, aren't you, Bryman?
I am.
Did you have any trouble with the accent? Because that's one of the biggest pitfalls of a lot of actors and voice actors is they tend to struggle with accents. Had I not known that you were from Australia, I could have quite easily mistook you for American. With how you speak.
Yeah, that's understandable. I find myself just in my day-to-day, just talking, and I talk less like an Australian while I'm at work. I think I just talk in any other accent that I can find.
That's good. It's
Just
a good
for
way
fun.
It's a good way of practicing. I tend to find when I'm in the house by myself, I'll like, oh, can I do a French accent? Can I do a Russian accent? Can I? And it's I think it's great for developing range. Are you voicing any more characters on this audio drama, or are you just Maldus and that's
At the
it?
moment, I'm just Maldus.
He's voicing side stuff here and there that will appear on some side stories along with the main.
Oh, brilliant! No, I look forward to hearing your range, man, because it sounds to me like you have got some pretty cool artistic range, and with your voice and things. Any other questions, Pathios? I think I've directed everything I need to direct at you. Is there anything more you would like to discuss?
Yeah, just one last little bit. Nothing doesn't have to be too long. The music, man. How did you think about that? I know. I had some input. Like, I didn't tell you, like, this is what it needs to start off like. Like, how did you think of that?
So at first I wanted, I was leaning heavily into Dawn of War, particularly Dark Crusade, the soundtrack from that. I was like having a listen to that, and I was like, what sort of instruments do they sort of lean on for that 40k sound? And it's very much staccato strings.
That's all right.
And choirs.
That's our holy Bible.
yeah. And then I also wanted to put a bit of, like, obviously Liam Lundin sort of stamp on the mix, because I like to mix things up quite wet, so that it sounds really sort of big and ambient and stuff. And and I remember we started with the sketches. I was like just sketching up these little ideas, and I sent them to you. And then it was a very enjoyable process because we back and forth, and I think like it was basically me trying to take the Dawn of War sound, combine it with my sound, and then take your input for the like almost like cooking, like these two things make the sauce, and then throwing the Pathios herbs on top.
Yeah,
I remember particularly with the choirs. It was like, I remember the input was, take off the I don't want the choirs humming in the background because that's just 40k, and it's gonna drag it into like. He's sending me a lot of Doom Eternal soundtracks and be like, listen to the choirs here, and can you do something like that? And I think that really helped. That really helped achieve that sound.
Yeah, that was definitely. Every time I hear it, man, that's exactly what I think about, the icon of sin.
Yeah. In terms of the writing, it was very easy to come up with initial ideas because the acting is brilliant and the writing is strong. So it's like, I just need to underscore what they're saying. I need to pick the emotions, and I need to pick the mood, like sort of take the mood and just amplify that. Like with the first score, I knew that just from the way they talk to each other, these guys don't like each other. Maldus and Felonius. There is tension there, so I'm going to add tremolo strings. I'm gonna throw some tension in there. With the Rhino score, I think the Rhino score was the biggest challenge because what I did was very driven. The original score, it was driving it was driving nothing forward. There was all these lovely little elements like the mood, but the main driving force of the score was, I think it was too much in the beginning. It was just, it's like this marchy music, but they're not marching. They're sat in a rhino having a chat.
That's what because I was like, there's so many things going on with this music, but they're just sitting.
Yeah, and I think that was fixed. That was just fixed by half stepping it. I remember now. I just
getting rid of half of what you had.
Yeah, basically just got rid of half the notes, and it just created this lovely little stabby track that, and we could the beauty of that was it brought out the elements that you liked and that you wanted to hear. So when Pathios starts talking about his doubts and, you know, no spoilers, but possibly underscoring something, you know, it amplified those cellos and those violins more, and, you know, like it helped bring when a Volcar is psyching, you know, when you get that lovely ethereal choir, it just brought it more to the front by taking away those driving drums and strings. The battle was the most fun to score, hands down. I remember spending hours doing the drums, making them really sort of like hit you in the face, punchy, and the staccato strings. And I just think the Rhino score, not the Rhino score, sorry, the battle score for me is awesome because there's no peril in it. When you hear it, it's like, no, the Astartes have arrived, they're about to kick ass. There's no moment of tension there, but it helps the mood, if that makes sense. It helps establish that these guys are not in any danger. They shouldn't be. They're Astartes, for crying out loud, you know. And I really liked that score. And the last score, I just think it really, again, it's like it sets that tension up, but there's not as much of it. So it's like, Marcellus and Maldus are at odds, but they're not as unfriendly to each other as say Maldus and Polonius.
What I liked about it is that's that score that leaves it open ended, like it's ready to begin. Kind of.
That was definitely my favorite part about it as well. The ending where you sort of get the strings sort of coming up and rising and the choirs and stuff. The score just amplifies what's already, for me, an amazing job by the actors and the writers of this project. It was very enjoyable to work on, for sure. I think that's everything, guys.
Sounds like it.
Yep, sorry, I'm having difficulties with my breathing. It's hay fever season here in Britain. So to everyone listening to this podcast, I would like to say a big thank you to Megabryman and Pathios for being on this project with me. This podcast with me, not project. So thank you very much, guys. I'd like to say a very big thank you for Scott for popping his head in and saying hello and giving some wonderful insights. And that's it, guys. Have a very good day.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Brilliant. See you soon.